Greetings, YouTube. I don't think I've ever discussed this topic here on my channel, and if I have, I apologize. After this many videos, sometimes even I forget. I find myself thinking about cyberpunk, nanotechnology, and friction. Now, one of the things that nanotechnology is all about is robotic systems on a very small scale, hence the term nano. And one of the things I think they would be remarkably good at would be polishing things. And you might be asking, well, why is that important? Well, imagine bearings that are almost perfectly smooth, or ship hulls that are so slick that algae and barnacles can't attach to themselves, that are so smooth that water essentially has no resistance against them. Think how fast your ship could be, or your submarine, or your torpedo, if you had such a coating on it. Same thing goes for a plane. Think how much that would benefit fuel costs, speeds, maneuverability, all of those things. Particularly for stealth technology, where even the smallest surface defect can just be a glaring object on a radar scope. Literally, something a fraction of an inch sticking off the surface of a stealth plane is huge on a radar screen. So nanotechnology could really make some significant, obvious changes. Now, there are less obvious changes. The inside of tubing and pipes that move liquids. Think about pipes that never clog, that allow water flow with no drag, or fuel flow with no drag, pipelines moving oil with no drag. You ask any engineer how much that's worth, and you'd probably get him to faint. So nanotechnology could make some really big impacts in that particular field. But it can do something else, I think. Now, you're probably all familiar with your classic LED, liquid crystal display. The classic that's been around for, 50 years now, I guess. I'm not sure. I can remember when they first came out, they were just, ooh, so cool. And at its most basic, that crystal display is a crystal that has two states. One in the vertical state and two in the horizontal state. In the vertical state, it essentially is transparent. It's the white space, and in the horizontal state, it is now blocking the screen, and it now is visible. So you get black numbers, no black numbers. Of course, the LCD screens you see on televisions are far more advanced than that. But this basic model is what I'm talking about, because it is playing right into my next idea. Now imagine you have a floor of a building, and that floor of a building in its rest state is the vertical little crystals all pointing up like this. And in this little vertical position, the floor has a friction about the same as polished marble. So it's your classic, really attractive floor. And since you're talking about nanotechnology here, the pattern could be anything. You could even change it on a regular basis at the whims of the designers, or it could be interactive, or it could have animations built into it. It could be very attractive. But the friction it's producing is about the same as polished marble. Now, at the flick of a switch, all those little crystals go like this, and the surface becomes effectively near frictionless. Not frictionless, you can't have a totally frictionless surface, but now it's like an ice ring. Now the advantage to this is that, say you have an intruder, you flick the switch, it all goes flat, and all of a sudden they're like Bambi on the ice. They simply have nowhere to get any traction, and they're falling over themselves onto the floor, which makes them somewhat easy to pick off if you're the security forces, or whether they be human or robotic or lasers built into the ceilings. When your bad guys are floundering around the ground like fish out of water, they're not too effective. Now you also have your security forces, if they're in case, say, humans, having friend or foe chips built into their shoes or their boots. So as they're walking across this surface, they're getting friction as the floor would under normal circumstances, and they're not having to deal with the nearly frictionless surface that the intruders are. So they're walking or running towards the bad guys while the bad guys are trying desperately to swim their way into freedom. And I think it would be humorous for PCs to be floundering around like that, or at least temporarily humorous, until the security forces showed up and began to open fire with all of the stolidity that they have, standing up on their little special boots. So it's just an idea, a couple ideas I've been floating around in my head, and like I said, I don't think I've ever covered this before, and if I have, I apologize. But I do have new subscribers at this point, so maybe other people will have thoughts on this topic. Both the idea of creating frictionless or near frictionless services in pipes and ships and planes and submarines and torpedoes, and on having an interactive floor which could make breaking and entering a building much more difficult. Not to mention on the outside of buildings, make it difficult to climb them, which is, the classic Spider-Man thing. Spider-Man's not going to have much of as an easy time when all those wonderful little hairs he's got have nothing to grab. And would the geckos be able to do it though? They're working with static electricity on a very small scale. That's an interesting question. Could geckos or gecko gloves be able to climb a surface that was nearly frictionless? That's intriguing. I don't know. Anyone out there does, get back to me. So, what are your thoughts on the use of nanotechnology in novel ways, in ways that maybe aren't immediately obvious? I mean, other than things like, the great gray goo disaster that would wipe out all life on Earth.